Did Games Workshop rip off Battletech? Now, certainly Games Workshop with Warhammer 40,000, the Grimdark, it has a great narrative. It has a great kind of focus on the tabletop, manifesting through some amazing models. But within that lore, it's interesting how aggressive GW defends their IP. But within that lore, they've acquired, that would be a nice way of saying it, from other science fiction authors, franchises, ideas, and narratives. The whole Aliens thing essentially morphed into Tyranids. The whole Terminator thing especially morphed into Necrons. And this is coming from both a Tyranid enthusiast and a diehard Necron player. Every time I play those models over the years, the way they've evolved has certainly been very 40K kind of Games Workshop, but we all know where they got their start. Look at the classic Necron Raiders, the metal miniature models. We know that they're Terminators. We know it's a T-1000. So it's interesting that Games Workshop has such a profound Grimdark IP, but they borrow from absolutely everything. Now, jumping over to the Battletech side, these massive war machines, certainly humanoid-like war machines, mechs, this is nothing new. Certainly war robots have been around forever. It's a natural evolution. Robots are powerful. Scale it up and put it in control of a human being. This idea in Battletech that the technology is so advanced, but to control such a machine, the Neuro Helmet, the ability for a human pilot to be one with the mech, operate the mech, feel that feedback, that is an important piece of Battletech technology, not only in training for the mech warrior, but in Lost Tech. Now, on the Battletech side, over to the Warhammer 40K side, we see something similar with dreadnoughts. And this was one of the first references, this idea of a Space Marine war robot that is controlled by a Space Marine, a human that has been so injured in combat, not even in death does duty end. So this idea of placing an injured Space Marine into this war machine and controlling it from there. When did dreadnoughts really kind of switch over from war robots in 40K, or looking at Rogue Trader, Imperial Army robots, to dreadnoughts proper, to being a wounded Space Marine controlling a dreadnought? That narrative, it's a little bit blurry. Now, if we jump on the side of Titanicus, the Titan war machines, for a long time, this lore in Battletech was focused around Titanicus, the small-scale game, or if you had a lot of money to burn, purchasing a Forge World Titan and kind of using those experimental rules. But in exploring that narrative and the novels, the Black Library novels, there was this idea that depending on the size of the Titan, one pilot or a crew, certainly there were servitors, but essentially the commander of this Titan, of this war machine, directly interfacing and controlling the Titan itself. Still able to issue commands. There's, depending on the type of tech, the Mars tech, maybe they were a permanent fixture of the Titan war machine, or maybe they could plug and unplug. But it looks and feels and tastes exactly like Battletech, only we've added some skulls or some spikes, depending on if it's Loyalist or Chaos. And I'm trying to track down from the old Mechanicus sources. You know, GW had mentioned, before there was a Horus Heresy, when they mentioned these Titan war machines, it was kind of not well defined, like how do they operate? They have a crew, they have a commander, but it seems like that interface came after Battletech, after that Battletech lore was established, because they were both around in the 80s. So did Games Workshop borrow from Battletech, and when did that happen? Or did GW kind of come up with this on their own? An interesting question, a curious question, because while I certainly love my Grimdark, we all know where a lot of this stuff comes from GW. The thing is, they never acknowledge it, and at the same time enforce their IP with literally the Inquisition.